I never thought of myself as someone who rushed into things. But looking back now, I guess I did, especially when it came to Sarah. My name is Matt. I'm 27 years old, and I live in Fort Worth, Texas. Back then, I had a pretty simple life. I worked as a maintenance supervisor for the school district, played poker with the guys every other Friday, and spent Sundays fishing with my cousin Wes. Life was steady, predictable in the best kind of way. Then I met Sarah. It was a buddy's barbecue in the middle of May. One of those early summer afternoons where the sun's just right and the beer's ice cold. I was standing near the grill, talking nonsense with Wes about how the ribs were undercooked when I saw her. She was wearing this blue sundress and aviators, sipping sweet tea from a mason jar. She didn't look like she belonged there, in the best way. Too put together. Too elegant. "Hey," I said, walking over, half drunk on beer and boldness. "You think if I drop one of these burgers, I can claim it's smoked?" She laughed. Like, really laughed. Not that polite kind either. A real, belly-deep laugh that made me grin like a fool. From that moment on, it was fast. Too fast, maybe. We went on our first date the next night. I took her to Joe T. Garcia's, said it was a test. If she could handle the long line and still smile, she was a keeper. She passed with flying colors. 2 weeks later, she left her apartment in Dallas and moved into my little place near Lake Worth. 8 months after we met, we got married at a courthouse with just our moms and my best friend as witnesses. Everyone said we were rushing it. Maybe we were, but it felt right at the time. Sarah had this magnetic pull. She made life feel like it was finally moving forward, like there was a plan. She worked in corporate marketing, had a sharp mind, and this polished, efficient way of speaking that always made me feel a little rough around the edges, but I liked that. I liked her drive. I thought it would balance me out. For a while, it worked. Our little home was cozy. I kept the yard tidy, fixed things before she could even ask. She filled the kitchen with scented candles and made calendar reminders for everything. Anniversaries, car inspections, even trash day. We played house like pros. Then came the big news. Sarah was pregnant. I'll never forget the look on her face when she told me. She wasn't smiling. Not exactly sad either. Just measured. Like she was already running calculations in her head. Me? I was over the moon. I ran out and bought baby books, started looking up DIY crib plans. We found out it was a boy and named him Luke before he was even born. I remember holding him for the first time. He was all cheeks and red skin and tiny fists. I cried. Quietly but hard. I'd never felt so certain of anything in my life. This was my purpose. This little boy. I told Sarah, whatever happens, I've got him. Always. And I meant it. Back then, I thought I had everything I ever wanted. A wife. A home. A son. But even in those early days, there were signs, little things I didn't want to see. Tight smiles. Short answers. A silence that grew slowly, like a crack beneath the surface. But I wasn't ready to face any of that. Not yet. For a while, I let myself believe we were happy. Luke was about 6 months old when I started noticing the change. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. Newborns are no joke. We were both sleep-deprived, running on caffeine and sheer willpower. I was working full-time, taking extra shifts whenever I could, and still getting up at night to change diapers or rock Luke back to sleep so Sarah could rest. I figured she was just overwhelmed, like I was. But after a while, it didn't feel like tiredness. It felt like distance. She started pulling away, not in any dramatic way, just little things. She stopped calling me during her lunch breaks. Didn't laugh at my dumb jokes anymore. She'd sit on the couch after dinner, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even in the room. When I asked how her day was, she'd just shrug and say, "Same as always." Like there was nothing worth sharing anymore. One night, I came home with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I even picked up a little orchid plant from the gas station, thinking it might make her smile. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. "I thought we could eat together," I said, setting the bags down and handing her the flower. "I know you've been stressed." She barely looked up. "You didn't need to do all that." "Yeah, I know," I said, trying to stay upbeat. "But I wanted to." She forced a small smile, then went right back to typing. "Can you check on Luke? He's fussing again." That was it. No thank you. No curiosity about how my day was. Just another task. I told myself not to take it personally. People change after kids, right? Hormones, stress, sleep deprivation. I Googled all of it. I read articles about postpartum mood shifts, emotional withdrawal, even burnout. I tried to be patient, supportive. I picked up the slack, more diapers, more dishes, more late-night bottle runs. I even started meal prepping lunches for her, writing little notes, and slipping them into her bag. "You're doing great. Love you." Sometimes they went unread. Sometimes I found them crumpled in the trash. One Saturday, I spent 3 hours setting up a fancy dinner at home. Candlelight, real napkins, that playlist she used to love in the early days. Luke was down for a nap. I had the whole evening planned. When she walked in and saw the table, she just stood there. "What's all this?" she asked, not smiling. "I thought we could use a night to reconnect. Just us." She looked past me, glanced at the food, then down at her phone. "You know I've got a report due Monday, right?" I stood there holding a glass of wine like a fool. "Sarah, I miss you." She let out a quiet sigh and said, "Matt, not everything's about feelings. Can we not do this right now?" That stung more than I expected, and I felt something shift inside me. A small click, like a door quietly locking from the inside. But I didn't give up. I kept trying. I suggested counseling. She said she didn't have time. I offered to plan a weekend getaway, just the two of us. She rolled her eyes and said we needed to be practical. I asked if she was okay, really okay, and she said, "I'm fine. Stop acting like I'm broken." So I stopped asking. Instead, I poured everything I had into being a dad. Every smile from Luke, every tiny giggle, every sleepy cuddle. Those were the things that kept me going. I'd rock him to sleep at night, whispering promises into his tiny ear. "Daddy's here. Daddy's not going anywhere." I still believed we could turn things around. I wanted to believe that. But deep down, a quiet part of me was already starting to wonder, was I the only one fighting for this? It started with the phone. Sarah had always been a little guarded about her texts, but it wasn't a big deal. Everyone needs a little privacy, I figured. But then it became something else. She'd jerk the phone away if I walked by, change her screen, put it face down during dinner, even when it was buzzing nonstop. I tried not to jump to conclusions. I told myself, maybe it's just work. Maybe she's venting to a friend. But the truth was, I already knew something had shifted between us. And now it was starting to feel like a secret. One night after Luke went to bed, I found her curled up on the couch with that same blank look on her face, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Who you talking to?" I asked casually. She glanced up. "Just a coworker." At 10:15. She didn't answer right away, just shrugged and went back to typing. "We're prepping for a launch." I tried to leave it at that, but the name kept showing up. Jason. Jason from her marketing team. He'd come up in conversation a few times before, always followed by some little laugh or eye roll. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now I couldn't unsee it. One night, I picked up her phone by mistake. It was on the coffee table, next to mine. We had the same case. I wasn't snooping, not at first, but when the screen lit up, I saw the preview. "Jason, wish I could have stayed in that meeting with you a little longer." Winky face. My stomach sank. I didn't say anything right away. I just walked to the back porch, sat in the dark, and stared at nothing. My mind spun in circles. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe I misread it. But that wink, that message, that wasn't nothing. When I finally brought it up a few days later, I kept my voice calm. "Are you and Jason close?" She looked up from her laptop like I'd just accused her of robbing a bank. "What's that supposed to mean?" I saw a message. It looked flirty. She snorted. "Jesus, Matt, are you spying on me now?" I picked up your phone by accident. I wasn't looking for anything. She rolled her eyes and got up. "You're being paranoid. God, I can't even talk to people anymore without being accused of cheating." "I didn't say you were cheating," I said quietly. "But something's not right." That's when she snapped. "You know what's not right? Coming home to a man who stares at me like I'm the enemy, who tries to play detective instead of asking how I'm doing. I'm exhausted, Matt, and I'm not in the mood for some jealous husband routine." And just like that, the conversation was over. After that night, she stopped pretending. She stayed out later, kept her phone locked tight, started saying things like, "You don't get it," or "You're smothering me," or worst of all, "I just need space." So I gave her space. I stopped asking questions, stopped pushing for connection. I woke up, made breakfast, got Luke dressed, went to work, came home, put him to bed. Repeat. She became a ghost in our house, drifting in and out without explanation. And I became a shadow of myself. But no matter how bad it got, one thing never changed: my love for that little boy. Every night, as I rocked Luke to sleep, I whispered the same thing into his ear. "I got you, buddy. No matter what." Emma was barely 3 months old when I came home to a manila envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. Sarah wasn't home. No note, no message. Just the envelope. Thick, sealed, legal-sized. I knew what it was before I opened it. Inside were the divorce papers. I stood there for a long time, not moving. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I just stared at the stack of paperwork like it was written in another language. After everything, after the nights pacing the hall with a crying baby, the overtime shifts, the bottles washed at 2 a.m., the way I still try to hold our family together with duct tape and grit. This was how she told me it was over? When Sarah finally walked in an hour later, calm as ever, she barely looked at me. "You saw them?" she asked, slipping off her heels like she was talking about grocery bags. "You filed for divorce," I said, voice hoarse. No conversation, no counseling, nothing. She sighed. "Matt, I've been emotionally done for a long time. Then why didn't you say something? I did, she snapped. You just weren't listening. I stared at her, stunned. So that's it. You dropped this on me like junk mail and think we'll just go about our day? I didn't want to fight. I figured this was cleaner. Cleaner. Like I was a stain she wanted to scrub away. She told me I was cold, unavailable. Said she felt like she was living with a roommate who only cared about the kids. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every sacrifice I made. Every night I stood in the kitchen rocking Emma while she scrolled Instagram. Every time I held my tongue to keep the peace. Instead, I just stood there and said, okay. Because what else was there to say? I didn't want a war. I didn't want our kids growing up in a house full of bitterness. So I signed the papers. We agreed on a 50-50 custody split. I didn't fight her on it, even though part of me wanted to. I didn't want to take Luke and Emma away from their mother. I just wanted to be there, really be there, for as much of their lives as I possibly could. Moving out was the hardest part. I packed my things into a U-Haul while Luke napped and Emma fussed in her bassinet. Sarah didn't say much, just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. My new place was small, 2 bedrooms, barely enough room to turn around in the kitchen. But it was mine. I set up cribs, bought used furniture, hung pictures of Luke's preschool drawings on the fridge like they were masterpieces. The first night I had both kids, I barely slept. Not because they kept me up, they didn't. It was the silence. The absence of Sarah's footsteps down the hall. The weight of knowing this was my new normal. Luke asked me, why can't mommy live here too? I knelt beside him, steadying my voice. Because sometimes grown-ups decide they're better apart. But we both love you and Emma so much. That will never change. He nodded like he understood. I don't think he did, not really. But he hugged me tight, and that was enough. After the kids went to sleep, I sat on the couch in the dark and let myself fall apart. Just for a minute. Just enough to release the ache in my chest. Then I wiped my face and started folding laundry. Because that's what being a dad meant now. It meant holding your world together, even when it's already in pieces. Especially then. If there was a handbook for single dads, I never got a copy. The first few months after the divorce felt like trying to juggle knives while blindfolded. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., feed Emma while Luke still slept, try to throw together some kind of breakfast, pack a toddler's bag, change diapers, and get everyone dressed. All before clocking into work at 7:30. By the time I dropped them off at daycare and made it to the maintenance office, I already felt like I'd run a marathon. And the evenings? Pure chaos. Bath time, story time, meltdowns, baby food on the ceiling. I was exhausted in a way I didn't even know was possible. But somehow, I kept going. There were nights I'd fall asleep with Emma in one arm and Luke curled up beside me, my clothes still smelling like sweat and spit up. And weirdly, those were the best nights, the kind where I felt like I was doing something right, even if no one saw it but them. The custody exchange started out civil, but it didn't take long before the awkwardness crept in. Sarah would show up with a tense smile, James waiting behind the wheel of his shiny SUV. Luke never said much during drop-offs, just held my hand a little tighter when I kissed him goodbye. At first, I tried to be polite with James. After all, he was going to be around my kids. I figured the least I could do was keep it respectful. But James, man, he rubbed me the wrong way from the start. It wasn't anything huge, just the way he talked. Patronizing. Like he was already practicing to be dad of the year. He'd say things like, we're trying to get Luke into a better routine, or, Emma really needs structure at this age. And every time he used the word we, I had to bite my tongue. One time, after Luke's preschool open house, James cornered me in the parking lot. Hey, just so you know, he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder like we were old pals. I told the teacher to loop me in on everything, since, you know, I'm around so much. I stared at him. You mean you told her you're the stepdad? He chuckled. Well, yeah, basically. I didn't say a word, just turned and walked to my truck before I said something I couldn't take back. The hardest part was watching Luke try to make sense of everything. He was 5, old enough to know something was off, but too young to put it into words. One night, after Sarah picked them up, he left behind his favorite stuffed dinosaur, the one he never slept without. I found it on the couch and texted her to let her know. 15 minutes later, she replied, James says it's a good time for him to start learning how to sleep without it. I stared at the message for a long time. That's when I realized they were building a whole new world over there. One where I was being gradually erased, little by little. But I didn't let it show. Not to the kids. When they were with me, I made sure they knew they were safe. That this house was theirs. That I was still their dad, through all of it. We built pillow forts. Had pancake dinners. Took walks to the duck pond with Emma riding on my shoulders and Luke telling me stories about space robots and jellybean planets. It wasn't perfect. Hell, most days it barely felt functional. But I looked at their faces and thought, if I can give them just one good memory today, Maybe that's enough. And on the nights when Luke would fall asleep mid-story and Emma curled against my chest like she belonged there, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. A year after the divorce, Sarah got remarried. I'd like to say I was surprised, but I wasn't. She and James had been playing house for months, acting like the ink wasn't even dry yet. She didn't tell me they were engaged. I found out through Luke. He came back from her place one weekend holding a wedding invitation covered in glitter glue. Mom says we get to wear matching outfits, he said proudly. I gave him a smile, but it felt tight. Forced. That's great, buddy. The wedding was a small thing. Beach ceremony down in Galveston, no kids from my side invited. Which was fine. I wasn't itching for a front row seat anyway. By summer, they had a baby girl. Lily. She was born just before Luke's 6th birthday. Sarah sent me a text with a photo attached. Meet your kid's new sister. Lily Jane, 6 pounds, 12 ounces. James is over the moon. No, hope you're well. No, just wanted to share. Just a broadcast message. Like a birth announcement sent to a business contact. I showed the picture to Luke and Emma, because I wasn't about to make it weird for them. Luke was curious, asked if he'd get to play with her. Emma was too young to really understand, but she clapped and said, baby, like it was the best thing in the world. And me? I didn't feel much of anything. Not joy, not anger, just a dull acceptance. The real problem came later. James started getting possessive, slowly at first, but it built. At school events, he'd make a point of introducing himself to the teachers like he was the primary parent. At Luke's soccer game, he sat in the front row of the bleachers and yelled instructions like a coach. Let's go, son. Great hustle, buddy. Even though I was the one who signed Luke up and paid for the damn cleats. The first time I heard him refer to Luke as my boy to another parent, I almost choked on my Gatorade. I let it slide. Tried to be the bigger man. But inside, something started to fester. Then came the requests. Sarah started suggesting that I include Lily when I took Luke and Emma for the weekend. She sees them leave and gets so sad. She said one afternoon at drop-off. It would mean a lot if she could come sometimes too. Just for family bonding. She's not my child, I said calmly. She's their sister. I understand that. But I'm not her father. She has 2 parents already. Sarah sighed like I was being stubborn. Matt, you're creating a divide. No, I said. I'm protecting a boundary. After that, the pressure ramped up. Gifts started showing up at my door. A toy with Lily's name on it. A pink sweater in Emma's size and one for Lily, identical, as if I was supposed to bring both back with me next time. When I returned them to Sarah's doorstep with a note that said, not mine to keep, she texted me 5 minutes later. I hope you realize how hurtful you're being. This blended family thing works better when everyone acts like an adult. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I knew she didn't want a conversation. She wanted control. I wasn't angry at Lily. None of this was her fault. But I wasn't going to let myself be guilt-tripped into pretending I was her father either. That title meant something. It wasn't a favor. It wasn't a job you could assign to someone because it was convenient. It was earned. It was lived. It was held through every sleepless night and scraped knee and last-minute science project. I was Luke and Emma's father, and that would always be enough, even if Sarah and James couldn't see it. It started with an email from Luke's school. We're thrilled to inform you that Luke and Emma have been accepted into the Young Innovators Tech Camp this summer. I didn't even finish reading before I was grinning. It was the kind of program that got kids excited about coding, robotics, all that hands-on stuff. Luke was already obsessed with gadgets, and Emma, even at 4, was always asking questions about how things worked. I couldn't think of anything more perfect. The next day, I called the camp office, confirmed the costs, and paid the tuition for both kids in full. It felt good, not just because I could afford it, but because it was something for them. Something that had nothing to do with the divorce or custody or James or any of that mess. Just pure joy. A win. 2 days later, Sarah called. I saw the camp confirmation, she said, her tone already clipped. So you just signed them up without checking with me? I got the acceptance letter. I figured you'd be happy. I am, she said, then paused. But what about Lily? What about her? She's their sister, Matt. You really didn't think she'd want to go too? I didn't answer right away. My brain already knew where this was heading. Matt, she's going to feel left out. This camp is a big deal. If Luke and Emma go and she doesn't, she's not my responsibility, I said quietly. And she's not eligible. It's for kids 5 and up. She turns 5 in July. The camp starts in June. Silence. Then, okay, but even so, couldn't you have offered to pay for her too? You paid for both of your kids. I took a breath. Because they're my kids, Sarah, that's where my responsibility ends. She scoffed. You don't think this kind of thing affects them? Don't you care about the dynamic between the siblings? That's your job to manage, I said. You and James made your family. I'm doing everything I can for mine. She didn't like that answer. I could hear it in the way she hung up. Sharp, no goodbye. That weekend, Luke was quiet. At dinner, he finally looked up and said, "Mom says Lily might not get to go to camp because you didn't want to pay." I put my fork down and closed my eyes for a second. "Luke," I said, steadying my voice, "did you earn your spot at camp?" "Yeah." "Did Emma?" He nodded. "Then don't let anyone make you feel bad about it. You worked hard. You deserve it. That's the end of the story." He looked down, then gave a small nod. The next day, I got a text from James. "It's really disappointing to see you create division like this. I would have thought you cared more about all the kids' well-being." I didn't respond. Then Sarah emailed me a long message about family values and teaching empathy and how I was setting a harmful example. Again, I didn't respond. What I wanted to say was this: empathy doesn't mean financing someone else's expectations. Boundaries are not cruelty. And saying no doesn't make me the villain. It makes me a parent with a spine. Let them call me selfish. Let them whisper about me during school pickups or birthday parties. My kids knew the truth. And when Luke came home from camp that first day, face lit up, arms full of projects, and Emma ran into the kitchen babbling about building a solar oven, I knew I'd made the right choice. Let them twist it how they want. I wasn't paying for approval anymore. Error in message stream retry. I should have known the money issue wouldn't be the end of it. A few weeks after tech camp started, I got a certified letter from Sarah's lawyer. I sat at the kitchen table, Luke coloring at the counter, Emma on the floor with her blocks, as I opened it with hands that already knew it was bad. The letter accused me of emotional neglect, claiming that my refusal to include Lily in activities was damaging to the sibling bond. It also said Sarah and James were seeking a re-evaluation of the custody agreement in light of Matt's lack of cooperation in maintaining a healthy, blended family environment. I read it 3 times. Slowly. Then I laughed, short, bitter, humorless. They weren't just mad I wouldn't pay for Lily's camp. They were trying to punish me for setting boundaries. That night, after the kids went to bed, I called a lawyer. Her name was Renee. She was calm, sharp, and didn't flinch when I explained what had been happening. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "I've got text messages, emails, screenshots." "Start organizing them. I'll file a response first thing in the morning." Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything. Every time Sarah guilt-tripped me about Lily. Every time James overstepped. Every screenshot of them pushing their version of a blended family while trying to siphon more time, more money, more control from me. Renee didn't miss a beat. "They're building a case on emotion," she said during one meeting. "We're going to build one on facts." The court battle dragged into late summer. Mediation was a joke. Sarah stormed out halfway through the first session because I wouldn't agree to split holiday time with Lily included. "You're punishing an innocent child," she snapped as she slammed her folder shut. I kept my voice even. "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm being a father to my children. That's all I've ever done." James tried to play the good guy. Polite emails, soft-spoken comments in the courtroom hallways, but it was all a mask. One time, he leaned in and said, "You know, it doesn't have to be this hard." I looked at him and replied, "Then stop making it hard." By the time we reached the final hearing, I was exhausted. But Renee was confident. She laid out the evidence with zero fluff. Texts showing Sarah's attempts to pressure me into taking financial responsibility for Lily, emails from James overstepping parental roles, documentation of my consistency with Luke and Emma, and proof of their academic and emotional progress in my care. At one point, Renee played a voicemail Sarah left me, the one where she said, "You're teaching your kids to be selfish just like you," because I wouldn't include Lily in my weekend plans. The judge raised an eyebrow. Sarah's lawyer looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. When it was over, the judge ruled in my favor. I got 70-30 custody. Sarah's motion for a change in arrangement was denied, and the court ordered all future communication between us be done through a parenting app, monitored and logged. Outside the courtroom, James muttered, "Congratulations. You win." I looked at him dead in the eyes. It was never a game. That night, after dinner, I told Luke and Emma the basics. "We'll still see Mommy, but you'll be here more," I said. "It's just so we have a more peaceful schedule. No more bouncing back and forth as much." Luke nodded slowly. "Okay." Emma asked if she still got pancakes on Saturdays. I told her yes, always. When they went to bed, I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to them breathe. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even relieved. I was just still. For the first time in a long time, no one could take this from me. Not with guilt. Not with pressure. Not with legal threats. I had fought for my children. And I had won. Not just in court, but in my heart, too. 2 months after the court ruling, I moved into a new house, a small, single-story place 10 minutes from Luke and Emma's school, with a fenced-in yard and a little front porch that got perfect morning light. It wasn't fancy, but it felt right. It felt like home. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. Luke helped me set up the living room, insisting his drawings go on the fridge first before anything else. Emma picked out pink curtains for her bedroom, and I let her, even though they clashed with the walls. I wanted them to feel ownership here. Stability. Peace. Our old routine turned into something better. Calmer. We ate dinner together every night. Sometimes scrambled eggs, sometimes frozen pizza, sometimes actual recipes if I remembered to hit the grocery store. We started a bedtime tradition. Luke would pick the story, Emma would pick the stuffed animal, and I'd do all the voices, no matter how tired I was. One night, Luke leaned over while I was tucking him in and whispered, "I like this house better. It feels nicer." He didn't mean the size. He meant the quiet, the comfort, the safety. James and Sarah still had their weekend visits, but everything had to go through the court-ordered app now, and that changed everything. No more passive-aggressive texts. No more last-minute schedule changes or guilt trips. If it wasn't written in the app, it didn't happen. That alone gave me back more peace than I could have imagined. I also started doing something I hadn't done in a long time, living for myself. I went back to the gym, got serious about cooking instead of just surviving off leftovers. I even started going fishing again, just for an hour here or there after I dropped the kids off, nothing fancy. But it reminded me of the person I used to be before everything got complicated. Eventually, I dipped a toe into dating. I wasn't in a rush, but I was open to something real, something peaceful. No drama, no power struggles, just someone who understood what it meant to build a quiet life after chaos. Her name was Rachel. We met through a mutual friend from work. She was a speech therapist, divorced, no kids of her own, but close with her nieces and nephews. She didn't ask about Sarah. She didn't try to play mom. She just listened, talked, laughed easily. The first time she met Luke and Emma, it was at a park. Emma immediately took to her, handing her leaves and twirling in circles. Luke was quieter, but after Rachel showed him how to skip a rock across the pond, he grinned and said, "She's kinda cool." We took it slow. No sleepovers, no big family introductions. I made sure the kids always came first, that nothing would disrupt their rhythm again. And Rachel understood. She even admired it. One evening, after the kids were asleep and Rachel and I were sitting on the back porch, sipping tea, she said, "You're a really good dad, you know." I shrugged, not used to the praise. "I'm just trying to do right by them." "No," she said gently. "You already are." I stared out into the yard, the soft hum of crickets in the background, and felt something settle in my chest. Not pride exactly, not relief either. It was peace. Real, steady peace. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was rebuilding my life. I felt like I was finally living it. The last hearing was 6 months ago. The legal files were packed away in a box in my closet. The parenting app still pinged on occasion, but most days it was quiet, like the storm had finally moved on and all that was left was sky. I was standing in the kitchen making pancakes when Luke walked in one Saturday morning, rubbing his eyes. He climbed onto the stool, still in his rocket pajamas, and looked around the room like he was thinking about something big. "Hey Dad," he said, "remember when we used to go back and forth a lot more?" I nodded. "Yeah, I remember. I like it better now." He didn't say it for a reaction. He just said it, like it was a simple truth he'd carried around for a while. I smiled, poured more batter onto the skillet, and said, "Me too." I didn't need a judge's signature to tell me I'd done the right thing. It was in the little moments, when Emma ran across the room shouting, "Daddy's home," or when Luke asked me for help with his science project even though he could have asked James or Sarah. It was in the way they looked at me, certain, steady, safe. Sarah still tried, every now and then. She sent a message around Lily's birthday asking if I wanted to contribute to a group gift for all the kids. I didn't reply. The court had already spoken. My kids knew who I was. I didn't need to explain anything. James mostly kept to himself now. I think the court ruling humbled him in ways words never could. I didn't hear much from him anymore, and I preferred it that way. My relationship with Rachel stayed slow and steady. She never tried to take up space that wasn't hers. She asked how the kids were doing without asking about the past. She showed up, not in loud or flashy ways, but in the kind that mattered. One evening, Luke was helping me take out the trash, and out of nowhere, he said, "Thanks for not giving up." I looked down at him. Giving up on what? Me, Emma, everything. I knelt beside him, right there in the driveway, and put a hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me," I said. "You and your sister are the best things in my life. Nothing, and I mean nothing, could ever make me give up on you. Okay?" He nodded, serious as ever. "Okay." I stood up, and we kept walking. The sky was pink and gold, the kind of evening that makes you pause. I used to think my story was about loss, about what I'd given up, what was taken from me. But it wasn't. It was about holding the line when no one else would. About standing firm when people tried to rewrite the meaning of love and family. About knowing who I was, not the man Sarah tried to erase, or the wallet James wanted to exploit, but a father, a steady hand in the storm, and now, finally, a man at peace.